Jeff Beck, the legendary British guitarist whose work with the Yardbirds, the Jeff Beck Group, and his own solo career made him one of the most innovative guitarists of all time, was famously outspoken. Known for his mastery of tone and technique, Beck was never one to mince words about fellow musicians. While many adored him, his fiery temper, sharp tongue, and unshakable pride often put him at odds with others in the music world. Over the decades, Beck made it clear that there were certain musicians he simply could not stand. Here we explore 6 musicians that Jeff Beck openly criticized, resented, or expressed outright dislike for. In his world, music was war, and Beck's rivalries reveal just as much about his brilliance as they do about his battles. Few rivalries in rock history have been as mythologized as the tension between Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton. Both were Yardbirds alumni, both became guitar gods, and both carried the weight of being constantly compared to one another. Beck often bristled at Clapton's reputation as the people's guitarist. Clapton's slow-hand persona, his blues authenticity, and his tendency to embrace pop-rock sensibilities clashed with Beck's relentless need to innovate. Beck once quipped that Clapton was stuck in the blues while he was off exploring jazz fusion, hard rock, and electronic soundscapes. The resentment wasn't just artistic, it was personal. Clapton's departure from the Yardbirds left an open slot that Beck filled, but fans and critics constantly compared the two. Beck hated being overshadowed, especially when Clapton's mainstream fame eclipsed his own. And yet, there was respect buried in the hostility. They jammed together, traded licks, and occasionally shared the stage. But make no mistake, Jeff Beck despised being mentioned in the same breath as Clapton. To Beck, Clapton represented everything safe about guitar playing while he himself embodied danger and experimentation. Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page shared a long, tangled history. They grew up together in the same London scene, traded guitar secrets as teenagers, and both found themselves in the Yardbirds. For a while, they were close friends, two prodigies destined to reshape rock guitar. But by the time Led Zeppelin exploded, that friendship soured. Beck felt betrayed when Page, who replaced him in the Yardbirds, took the band's formula and built it into Led Zeppelin. While Page became a global superstar, Beck struggled with lineup changes, record label frustrations, and a reputation as difficult. In interviews, Beck hinted that Zeppelin's success was partially built on ideas the two of them had shared in their youth. The animosity reached a breaking point when Beck accused Page of stealing riffs. Though never proven, Beck suggested that Page's early Zeppelin material borrowed too heavily from Yardbirds-era experimentation. He hated the idea that his friend-turned-rival had cashed in on sounds he helped pioneer. Despite later reconciliations, Beck carried a lifelong bitterness about Page's fame. He once said, "Jimmy took the elevator, and I took the stairs." That bitterness never fully disappeared. It may surprise some fans to see Rod Stewart on this list, given that Jeff Beck recruited him for the Jeff Beck Group and considered him one of the greatest vocalists of his generation. But their partnership ended in acrimony, and Beck's bitterness toward Stewart lasted for decades. When Stewart left the Jeff Beck Group to pursue a solo career, Beck felt abandoned. Their collaboration had been electric, Beck's fiery guitar paired with Stewart's raspy, soulful voice. But Stewart, hungry for pop stardom, chose to leave the experimental path behind. Beck was enraged. He felt Stewart had sold out by chasing chart success instead of sticking with adventurous rock. To add insult to injury, Stewart's solo career became wildly successful, while Beck's output remained critically adored but commercially limited. Beck often mocked Stewart's later work, especially his foray into disco and slick pop. In one interview, Beck sneered, "Rod had the best voice in the world, and he wasted it." Their friendship flickered on and off over the years, but the wound of Stewart's departure never fully healed. To Beck, it was the ultimate betrayal. Jeff Beck and Ritchie Blackmore, the mercurial guitarist of Deep Purple and Rainbow, were bound to clash. Both were virtuosos with volcanic tempers, both obsessed with perfection, and both carried enormous egos. Their paths crossed often in the 1970s, and their mutual disdain was no secret. Beck dismissed Blackmore's playing as flashy but empty, criticizing his reliance on speed and theatrics. Blackmore, in turn, mocked Beck as pretentious and overly experimental. The rivalry wasn't just about guitar notes, it was about personality. Beck hated Blackmore's arrogance, C.E., and Blackmore found Beck insufferably self-righteous. Their feuding became legendary in British rock circles, with stories of the two insulting each other backstage at festivals and refusing to share bills. Ironically, fans often fantasized about a collaboration between the two, but their mutual hatred made it impossible. Instead, they became symbols of two different schools of guitar heroism. Beck, the restless innovator, and Blackmore, the neoclassical showman. Jeff Beck's foray into jazz fusion in the 1970s brought him into the orbit of John McLaughlin, the fiery guitarist behind the Mahavishnu Orchestra. For a brief time, Beck admired McLaughlin's technical brilliance, but admiration soon gave way to envy and disdain. Beck admitted he hated being compared to McLaughlin, whose breakneck speed and Eastern-inspired improvisations dazzled critics. Beck, always more about tone and feel than sheer speed, bristled at the idea that McLaughlin was seen as the superior technician. Their relationship was complicated. They shared stages and even jammed together, but Beck confessed in interviews that he couldn't stand McLaughlin's relentless, almost mechanical playing. He described it as all brain, no heart. What Beck truly hated was the shadow McLaughlin cast over him during the height of fusion. Beck's own fusion masterpiece, Blow by Blow, was partly a response to McLaughlin's dominance. In his eyes, McLaughlin represented everything cold and clinical about virtuosity, while Beck saw himself as the soul of the guitar. Perhaps the most surprising name on this list is Jimi Hendrix. Publicly, Beck often praised Hendrix as a genius, but privately, their relationship was more complicated. When Hendrix arrived in London in 1966, he revolutionized the guitar scene overnight. Beck, who had been one of the most innovative players of the time, suddenly found himself overshadowed. Hendrix's wild showmanship, feedback experiments, and boundary-breaking sound made even Beck's wildest tricks look tame. Beck's admiration for Hendrix was real, but so was his jealousy. He hated the way Hendrix dominated the spotlight and became the face of guitar innovation. Beck once admitted that seeing Hendrix play made him feel irrelevant. Their interactions were cordial but tense. Hendrix reportedly admired Beck's precision, while Beck privately resented the way Hendrix stole the thunder of the entire British guitar movement. When Hendrix died in 1970, Beck mourned him, but he also confessed that he felt conflicted, grieving the man while resenting the legacy that had haunted him. Looking back, Jeff Beck's disdain for these six musicians wasn't simple bitterness. In many cases, his so-called hatred reflected deeper insecurities and rivalries.